Chapter 4. The story of Pinocchio and the talking cricket, in which one sees that the bad children do not like to be corrected by those who know more than they do. It took very little time to get poor old Geppetto to prison. In the meantime, that rascal Pinocchio, free now from the clutches of the carabiner, was running wildly across the fields and meadow, taking one short cut after another toward home. In his wild flight, he leaped over brambles and bushes and across brooks and ponds as if they were a goat or a hare chased by hounds. On reaching home, he was found at the front door half open. He slipped into the room, locked the door, and threw himself on the floor, happy at his escape. But his happiness lasted only for a short time, for just then he heard someone saying, "Creak, creak, creak." "Who is calling me?" asked Pinocchio, greatly frightened. "I am." Pinocchio turned and saw a large cricket crawling slowly up the wall. "Tell me, cricket, who are you?" "I am the talking cricket, and I have been living in this room for more than 100 years. Today, however, this room is mine," said the puppet, "and if you wish to do me a favor, get out now, and I don't turn around even once." "I refuse to leave this spot," answered the cricket, "until I have told you the great truth." "Tell it then, and hurry." "Woe to the boys who refuse to obey their parents and run away from home. They will never be happy in this world, and when they are older they will be very sorry for it. Sing on, cricket mine, as you please. What I know is that tomorrow at dawn I leave this place forever. If I stay here, the same thing will happen to me which happens to all the other boys and girls. They are sent to school, and whether they want to or not, they must study. As for me, let me tell you, I hate to study. It's much more fun, I think, to chase after butterflies, climb trees, and steal birds' nests." "Poor little silly, don't you know that if you go on like they'll grow into a perfect donkey, and you will be the laughing stock of everyone?" "Keep still, you ugly cricket!" cried Pinocchio. But the cricket, who was a wise old philosopher, instead of being offended at Pinocchio's impudence, continued in the same tone, "If you do not like going to school, why don't you at least learn a trade, so that you can earn an honest living?" "Shall I tell you something?" asked Pinocchio, who was beginning to lose his patience. "Of all the trades in the world, there is only one that actually really suits me." "And what can that be?" That of eating, drinking, sleeping, playing, and wandering around from morning till night." "Let me tell you, for your own good, Pinocchio," said the talking cricket in his calm voice, "that those who follow the trade always end up in the hospital or in prison. Careful, ugly cricket, you make me angry. You'll be sorry." "Poor Pinocchio, I am sorry for you." "Why?" "Because you are a puppet, and what is much worse, you have a wooden head." At these last words, Pinocchio jumped up in the fury, took a hammer from the bench, and threw it with all his strength at the talking cricket. Perhaps he did not think that it would strike you, but sad to relate, my dear children, he did hit the cricket straight on his head. With a last weak creak, 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 the poor cricket fell from the wall dead. Chapter 5. Pinocchio is hungry and looks for an egg to cook himself, and omelette. But to his surprise, the omelette flies out of the window. If the cricket's death scared Pinocchio at all, it was only for the very few moments, for as the night came on, a queer, empty feeling at the pit of his stomach reminded the puppet that he had eaten nothing as yet. A boy's appetite grows very fast, and in a few moments the queer, empty feeling had become a hunger, and the hunger grew bigger and bigger until soon he was as ravenous as a bear. Poor Pinocchio ran to the fireplace where the pot was boiling and stretched out his hand to take the cover off. But to his amazement the pot was only painted. think how he felt. His long nose became at least 2 inches longer. He ran around the room, dug in all the boxes and drawers, and even looked under the bed in search of a piece of bread, hard though it may be, or a cookie, or perhaps a bit of fish. A bone left by a bone would have tasted good to him, but he found nothing. And meanwhile his hunger grew and grew. The only relief poor Pinocchio had was to yawn, and he certainly did yawn, such a big yawn that his mouth stretched out to the tips of his ears. Soon he became dizzy and faint, and he wept and wailed to himself. The talking cricket was right. It was wrong of me to disobey father and to run away from home. If he were here now, I wouldn't be so hungry. Oh, how horrible it is to be hungry. Suddenly he saw among the sweepings in a corner something round and white that looked very much like a hen's egg. In a jiffy he pounced upon it. It was an egg. The puppet's joy knew no bounds. It is impossible to describe it, so you must picture it for yourself. Certain that he was dreaming, he turned the egg over and over in his hands, fondled it, kissed it, and talked to it. And now, how shall I cook you? Shall I make you an omelette? No, it's better to fry you in a pan. Or shall I drink you? No, the best way is to fry you in a pan. You'll taste better. No sooner said that done, he placed the little pan over a foot warmer full of hot coals. In the pan, instead of oil or butter, he poured a little water. As soon as the water started to boil, tack, he broke the eggshell, but in place of the white and the yolk of the egg, a little yellow chick, fluffy and cheerful and smiling, escaped from it. Bowing politely to Pinocchio, he said to him, "Many, many thanks indeed, Mr. Pinocchio, for having saved me the trouble of breaking my shell. Goodbye, and good luck to you, and remember me to the family." With these words he spread out his wings, and darting to the open window, he flew away into space till he was out of sight. The poor puppet stood as if he turned to stone, with wide eyes, open mouth, and empty halves of the egg shell in his hands. When he recovered, he began to cry and shriek at the top of his lungs, stamping his feet on the ground and wailing all the while. The talking cricket was right. If I had not to run away from home, and if father were here now, I should not be dying of hunger. Oh, how horrible it is to be hungry. And as his stomach kept grumbling more than ever, and he had nothing to quiet it with, he thought of going out for a walk to the nearby village in hope of finding some charitable person who would give him a bit of bread. Chapter 6. Pinocchio falls asleep with his feet on the foot warmer and awakens the next day with all his feet burned off. Pinocchio hated the dark street, but he was so hungry that, in spite of it, he ran out of the house. The night was pitch black. It thundered, and bright flashes of lightning now and again shot across the sky, turning it into a sea of fire. An angry wind blew cold and raised dense clouds of dust, while the trees shook and moaned in a weird way. Pinocchio was greatly afraid of thunder and lightning, but the hunger he felt was far greater than his fear. In a dozen leaps and bounds he came to the village, tired out, puffing like a whale, and with his tongue hanging. The whole village was dark and deserted. The stores were closed, and the windows in the streets not even a dog could be seen. It seemed the village of the dead. Pinocchio, in desperation, ran up to the doorway, threw himself upon the bell, and pulled it widely, saying to himself, "Someone will surely answer that." He was right. An old man in a nightcap opened the window and looked out. He called down angrily, "What do you want at this hour of the night? Will you be good enough to give me a bit of bread? I am hungry." "Wait a minute, and I'll come right back," answered the old fellow. thinking he had to deal with one of those boys who love to roam around at night ringing people's bells while they are peacefully asleep. After a minute or two, the same voice cried, "Get under the window and hold out your hat." Pinocchio had no hat, but he managed to get under the window just in time to feel a shower of ice-cold water pour down on his poor wooden head, his shoulders, and over his whole body. He returned home as wet as a rag, and tired out from weariness and hunger. As he no longer had any strength left which to stand with, he sat down on a little stool and put his 2 feet on the foot stove to dry them. There he fell asleep, and while he slept his wooden feet began to burn. Slowly, very slowly, they blackened and turned into ashes. Pinocchio snored away happily as if his feet were not his own. At dawn he opened his eyes just as a loud knocking sounded at the door. "Who is it?" he called, yawning and rubbing his eyes. "It is I," answered a voice. It was the voice of Geppetto.